So, unlike the usual intro, I just want to get it out of the way right now that I really adore this show. Hunter x Hunter was a completely hidden gem for me. I'd only heard rumblings about it in recent years, and I decided to watch it on a whim, and I have to tell you that it's one of the best shows I've ever seen. Screw anime, I'm talking of all time. It's a brilliant, fun, action-packed, and deeply emotional show that follows the character of Gon, this 12-year-old boy, as he decides to become a hunter in order to try and find his father, who is also a hunter. This entire video is going to be about what a hunter is in the Hunter x Hunter universe, because it isn't just a guy like Elmer Fudd or some hobbyist girl on Tinder who doesn't care about your snowflake feelings. The long and short of what a hunter technically is in Hunter x Hunter can be described as follows. An individual who has passed a licensing exam and is thus given the authority to go almost anywhere they want in the world and do almost anything. They are part of an elite organization with no direct mission. Typically, hunters devote themselves to the pursuit of rarities, work as mercenaries, or travel the world searching for mystical objects or undiscovered locations. That's it. That's really all a hunter is, and a hunter doesn't have to do anything at all. Once an individual passes the hunter exam, they can go back to living a normal life, or they can even sell their hunter license on the black market for enough riches to last through 7 generations. This video isn't about what the technical definition of a hunter is. This video is about the first arc of the series and what its thematic message tells us makes a true hunter worthy of their license. To analyze the hunter exam arc, I'm going to be using the manga and the English dub of the 2011 anime as the sources for my breakdown. Yup. This show is so good that I felt I had to buy my first ever manga, so I'm transitioning into a full-blown weeb, which is only leveling up my sex appeal. If you've stuck around this long, I imagine you're likely a Hunter x Hunter fan, or at the very least curious about what the hell this show is. So to be more precise with exactly what I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be looking at episodes 1 through 21 of the anime, and chapters 1 through 38 of the manga, and there will be spoilers in this video for sure. Do not continue with this video if you are at all interested in watching this show. I won't be offended. In fact, I'd be highly honored if my analytics show a strong drop-off at this point because it means I've converted some of you. At least that's what I'll tell myself. In the rest of this video, I'm going to use a couple key examples to highlight my analysis. First, I'm going to focus on the narration we get about hunters. Then, I'm going to look at the conversations between the examiners to piece together exactly what they're testing for. Next, I'm going to focus on what we can learn through interactions between the core cast and Hisoka, who is outright stated to be running his own exam of sorts. And finally, I'll break down the final phase of the exam to see what everyone's rankings and the outcome meant for the message the story is trying to tell us about what makes someone worthy of becoming a hunter. So we're going to be kicking it off from the very beginning. Before the manga or anime even get into the plot or characters, we get narration that gives us the first explanation of what a hunter is. Both are pretty similar, so I'll let the wonderful anime narrator fill you in.
Strange beasts and monsters, vast riches, hidden treasures, evil haunts, uncharted frontiers, the mysterious unknown. The people who are captivated by the magic in those words are called hunters.
At the start of the second chapter of the manga, we actually get a slightly different description of what a hunter is. Hunters. People devoted to tracking down rare and priceless items, be they treasures or monsters or wonders unknown. So from these descriptions, it seems that the one thing that a hunter has to be is someone who is actively hunting for something. Makes sense. It could be wealth, a location, or something more metaphysical. But why then did both the initial descriptions include the following phrase? The people captivated by the magic in those words are called hunters. The second description doesn't say anything about being captivated by a hunt. It just says that they do hunt. Personally, I think that the difference between the two is the definition that the story wants to get across, followed by the technical definition. I think we are told right away a key aspect of what being a true hunter really means, and that is the captivation and undeniable will to pursue one's dream. With that in mind, let's go over the hunters that we meet in this arc. First, there is Mr. Satos, a ruins hunter, and then there is Menshi and Buhra, 2 gourmet hunters. Next, we meet Isaac Nedro, the chairman of the exam committee and Hunter Association, and then there is Lippo, who we actually don't know much about. Netero is clearly the most powerful of all of these hunters, but each has something to offer in regards to what a hunter is. Throughout the exam, we get glimpses into the minds of each, and there are a handful of conversations between them that do give the reader glimpses of what the exam is actually testing for outside of physical ability. Perhaps the most insightful conversation is between Menchi and Netero, when he comes down from his big ol' blimp to interfere with her failing everyone in the second phase. This, as well as the rest of this phase, goes pretty differently in the anime, and I think that was a mistake as it loses something critical. In the manga, Netero asks Menchi, "Did you fail them because, after testing their will to challenge the unknown, you found they lacked the desire?" From here, Menchi says no, and explains that she let her attitude get the best of her, and she's failed as an examiner. Then Netero gives her a chance to redeem herself. However, the key line of dialogue was Netero's initial question about why she failed them. If she answered yes, and she was honest, I believe Netero would have allowed her decision to fail all the current applicants go through. That seems to be the most important thing, at least to Netero, that the examiners are supposed to be testing for. This also goes along with the narration that we get at the beginning. It's clear that hunters often challenge the unknown, but they must also have a desire to actively do so. It must be something that runs through their hearts in order to make them true hunters worthy of passing the exam. But while the examiners are the ones running the test, Hisoka is also operating a little test of his own throughout the phases, so now I think it would be a good time to talk about this magician and the specifics of the hunter exam. In chapter 9 of the manga, we see that Hisoka is playing examiner by aiding in the selection process while the wannabe hunters are lost in Swindler Swamp. This is the first real look we get at Hisoka's cold-blooded malevolence as he wipes out a large group of people with a single playing card. Leorio, Kurapika, and number 78 get caught in his crossfire. This is another change from manga to anime, the importance of which I think will be clear after we get through this section. Unlike in the anime, the decision to split up to try and survive is 78's and not Kurapika's, but the rest of the scene plays out largely the same. After running off for a second, Leorio turns back around to challenge Hisoka, Kurapika is shown to have turned back around to watch, but 78 disappears. Hisoka tells Leorio that he likes his spirit before going to attack Leorio, but Gon lands a surprising hit in with his fishing rod. Hisoka is more stunned than hurt by this, and after swiftly knocking Leorio out, he catches Gon by the throat as he is moving in for another attack. Hisoka drops Gon and tells him not to worry, that he is done with Leorio and that he and Gon both passed. He states that they will both make good hunters, then he carries Leorio over to the next part of the exam and leaves Gon with Kurapika. The next chapter starts with 78 tied up in a tree with a playing card in his head as birds begin to feast on his corpse while Gon and Kurapika travel to the next part of the exam. I think that's important. That means that Hisoka managed to track down 78 while carrying Leorio and kill him. But why then did he leave Kurapika alive? Maybe he knew Kurapika would be too tough to fight as easily and didn't want to bother? Maybe, but I think there's something more to it. Although Hisoka doesn't outright say that Kurapika passed his twisted test, it's clear to me that he didn't outright fail either, or I do think Hisoka would have hunted him down just like he did 78. Kurapika does become a strong warrior later in the show, someone who could offer a challenge to Hisoka, but let's be honest and say that pre-Nen Kurapika wouldn't stand a chance in hell against Hisoka, so why let him live? Well, I think Hisoka also liked his spirit. While Kurapika didn't help in the fight, he did turn back to help Leorio, and honestly everything happened so fast that Kurapika didn't even have a chance to get involved, which is something I think he would have done. But there is another interaction between Kurapika and Hisoka in the fourth phase of the exam, where I believe Kurapika does explicitly pass Hisoka's test. Hisoka targets Kurapika and Leorio in the woods looking for badges. Kurapika lays out the situation plainly to Hisoka that he is willing to part with one badge that is of lesser value, but if Hisoka wants the others, he will have to fight them. This catches Hisoka's attention and amuses him. After confirming that Kurapika is not his target, he agrees to the deal with the pair and lets them walk free. He then comments to himself, "They've come so far in just a few days, but they still have far to go." Funny how unripe fruit always has a particular appeal. He then proceeds to enter a state of bloodlust, blaming the pair for getting him stirred up. We know from future events in the series just how hard it is for Hisoka to control himself and how little he cares to when the mood strikes him. In fact, the next thing we see him do is viciously attack the next person he sees while in a trance-like state. Why didn't Hisoka kill Kurapika and Leorio? He wasn't worried about a hard fight. The pair posed no physical challenge to him. He didn't because Kurapika passed the test. Hisoka liked his spirit and he let them live. Of course, he did it for his own selfish reasons. The creepy comments about unripe fruit says it all. Although it isn't an official part of the hunter exam, I think Hisoka has some interesting insights into what a hunter is supposed to be. We don't know much about Hisoka's backstory, but he is one of the most worldly characters in the series, so I think Hisoka knows probably better than any of the other contestants exactly what the hunter exam is testing for, and in his boredom, he is playing at examiner, trying to see who is worthy to pass the exam himself, in his own way attempting to best the examiners. I think another clue of that comes from his conversation with Netero about who he's keeping an eye on. However, the one bit of outright opinion we get from Hisoka during his examination is his comment about liking Leorio's spirit. Subsequently, Gon and Kurapika both show great feats of spirit, which I think it is safe to assume Hisoka also took a liking to, especially considering his obsession with Gon. Therefore, if we are incorporating Hisoka's bastardized testing into the exam, we can assume that hunters are a group of people that need to have an immense spirit, even in the face of certain death. Now, let's examine the final phase of the exam and what the rankings, winners, and loser all have to say. To start, I think taking a quick look at the remaining 9 contestants' conversations with Netero is valuable. Netero asks who each contestant is keeping an eye on and who each doesn't want to fight. The vast majority of contestants say that they are most interested in Hisoka, and then Gon is the clear second choice, while only 2 say Killua. One is his brother, Illumi, and the other is Hisoka, who then quickly states Gon's name as well. This is extremely curious, since Hisoka and Killua have not had an outright interaction up to this point. Killua is obviously powerful, and perhaps Hisoka knows the relationship between Illumi and Killua, but it does seem odd that of all people he says Killua before mentioning Gon. Understanding Hisoka's self-declared examiner position, this might be our first clue that Killua isn't long for the hunter exam. Now, let's take a look at the rankings for each contestant that Netero comes up with for the final tournament. Unlike the typical tournament, this one is set up where you must win only one match and then you pass. If you lose your match, you get a set amount of chances to fight again depending on your position within the bracket, so in the end, only one person will lose. Also, killing your opponent is an automatic failure, and then everyone else passes except the killer and the deceased. Netero states that those with the best exam scores get the most opportunities to pass the exam, so let's go through the bracket and see where everyone ranks. Hanzo and Gon both have the most chances to pass with 5 potential matches, making them both the most highly ranked. Next up, Hokul, Kurapika, and Hisoka are all set with 4 potential matches, then Killua and Bodoro with 3, and Leorio and Illumi with only 2. Why does this matter at all to our discussion about what makes a hunter? Well, the final test makes it clear that physicality is not even close to what makes someone worthy of becoming a hunter. Look at where Illumi is positioned in the ranking. He is tied for the lowest ranked, even though he's arguably the most powerful, yet he and Leorio have the same chances. The reason for this is clear when you look at what Netero says about how the rankings were determined. Netero says that the applicants got scored on 3 categories: physical ability, mental acuity, and overall impression. He then goes on to say that since they've made it to the final phase, there was no need for any of them to prove themselves in regards to the first 2 categories. Instead, this phase seems to be based largely on overall impression, which reflects whatever can't be pinned down by criteria, the examiner's assessment of their potential as hunters, and the opinions of their colleagues. We can see in Killua's reaction and frustration in his placement below Gon that he doesn't understand why he would score below his new friend, even though he is clearly more powerful than him. Gon probably isn't even in the top 5 when it comes to raw power, but when comparing his actions with Killua's throughout the entire exam, it becomes clear why Gon is the highest ranked and ultimately the first one to pass, whereas Killua is in the bottom 4 and the only one to fail. First, let's take a look at Gon's triumph, and then we will explore exactly why Killua ultimately lost. Gon is outmatched by Hanzo in every single way. Throughout the 3 hours of their match, Gon is continuously beaten bloody, and we only see him get one solid hit in on Hanzo, which doesn't do any lasting damage and is more a symbolic gesture. And yet, Gon ultimately wins and is the first to pass the exam. In fact, Gon is the one character we actually see pass the exam directly. The rest of the exam is told in quick instances of flashbacks. So it is through Gon's success that the show delivers its final message on what makes one worthy to be a hunter. And I think Gon sums up exactly what that message is with the line he delivers after kicking Hanzo in the face. This isn't about strength or skill, but about sticking to business no matter what. Or in the anime, this isn't a battle to see who's stronger, it's a battle to see who is willing to throw in the towel first. I believe Netero instituted the rules about not killing and a fighter having to admit defeat instead of a knockout being an automatic victory in order to test their will above everything else. After some arguing, Hanzo threatens Gon, claiming he's willing to kill him and throw the exam since he could just retake it next year. Unwilling to throw in the towel, Gon reminds us exactly what he is hunting for in the first place. He wants to find his dad. And because of that unflinching will, even in the face of death, to continue his hunt and never give up, Hanzo concedes defeat, and Gon earns his license. Though in classic Gon style, he is swiftly knocked out after arguing with Hanzo because he didn't want to win by concession. I believe that the confrontation between Gon and Hanzo really ties everything that I've discussed earlier into a neat package and makes it clear to the viewer that being a hunter is not about strength or skill, it's about something much more intangible. And I think that is reinforced with Killua's loss. Killua's loss is arguably more shocking than how Gon ultimately won, but the underlying causes for this loss were present throughout the entire story since his introduction. Unlike the other characters who are at the hunter exam, Killua does not have a stated purpose. Gon wants to become a hunter in order to meet his dad, Kurapika wants to be a hunter in order to hunt down the Phantom Troop and avenge his clan, and Leorio wants to make money to become a doctor. Killua is just there because he thought it would be fun to take the exam. Even Hisoka and Illumi have their reasons for wanting to pass, whereas Killua outright states multiple times that he's there just for a challenge and is uninterested in becoming a hunter. It's this underlying lack of drive that ultimately led to Killua's defeat. But let's examine the circumstances surrounding his defeat before circling back to this idea. Killua throws his first match with Pokol, stating he wants a challenge. Then his next match is against Illumi, who breaks his disguise and reveals himself. Illumi questions why Killua is even there, stating that he wouldn't make a good hunter since his calling is to be an assassin. He then claims that Killua has no flame, and that his only joy is causing death, just as he was trained by Illumi and their father. Killua fights back against this claim, saying that there is something that he wants, which Illumi readily denies. When pressed to say what it is he wants, Killua struggles at first, and then claims that all he wants is to be friends with Gon. Illumi retaliates that Killua is incapable of friendship, and is merely interested in Gon but will one day seek to kill him. When Leorio interjects that Killua and Gon are already friends, Illumi seeks to immediately go kill Gon. He reneges on this after some resistance from the onlookers, and instead claims that he'll kill Gon after he's become a hunter. He then states that the only way for Killua to stop him is to fight him, and that if Killua decides to throw the match, that will mean certain death for Gon. Paralyzed by fear of his older brother, Killua then throws the match, betraying his dream and conceding defeat to a superior opponent in a move that is the mirror opposite of Gon's own match. Shortly after, Killua kills Botaro in a state of bloodlust and is disqualified. It's heavily implied that Illumi used some hypnosis on Killua to get him into this state, which is more outright shown in the anime version of the events. Would Killua have passed the exam without Illumi's interference? I absolutely think so, but Illumi's presence highlighted in Killua a disqualifying trait to becoming a hunter, and it's his lack of a flame. Although Killua does come to some realization of his desire in his match with Illumi, he is too intimidated and scared to stick with it, and in his concession, he shows that he does not have the unflinching will that makes a hunter despite his incredible skill as an assassin. The difference between Killua and Gon is made clear in a scene they shared with Netero earlier in the arc, the final scene I'll be looking at in depth, and a scene that foreshadowed this outcome. Between the second and third phases of the exam, Netero challenges Gon and Killua to a little game of keep away, where all they have to do is get this ball away from him, and if they can, he'll pass them as hunters on the spot. No matter what Killua or Gon try, either individually or together, they cannot get the ball from Netero, and despite some quick thinking, they can't even get Netero to use his right hand or left leg in keeping the ball away from them. At this realization, Killua gives up, but Gon says he's gonna keep going. Killua tells Gon it's stupid to keep trying to get the ball, and Gon agrees, but he'd like to see if he could at least get Netero to use his right hand while there is still time in their flight. Right here is the key difference between Gon and Killua in this arc. When the going gets tough, Killua gives up, but Gon keeps going despite how futile the effort may seem in order to pursue a goal. And ultimately, while Gon doesn't get the ball, he does get Netero to use his right hand, which is a cause for his celebration, while Killua stews in his own inadequacies compared to Netero and lashes out on two undeserving contestants. At this point in the series, Killua is not worthy of becoming a hunter. He has no drive and no flame that he's willing to put everything on the line for, and ultimately, that is why his failure is the thematic conclusion to this arc. I'm not doing all this just to crap on Killua. He's actually one of my favorites, and I do think that he would have passed the Hunter exam easily without the interference of Illumi, but the fact of the matter is that the story deemed showing Killua failing as vital to the plot, and I think it is because it reinforces Gon's character and achievements at becoming a hunter. In Gon's confrontation with Illumi after the exam, Gon accuses Illumi of kidnapping Killua's spirit, which is what caused him to fail. Gon fully blames Illumi's abuse and manipulation for Killua's failure. Gon knows that Killua would make a great hunter because he has seen the flame in Killua that Illumi never did. A flame that Killua himself has trouble identifying until it is too late. Ultimately, without the interference of Illumi, Killua likely would have become a hunter after this exam, but due to the nature of the story, his failure serves to highlight what the first arc of Hunter x Hunter is all about, and that is what makes a true hunter. In the end, those who pass the Hunter exam are Gon, Kurapika, Leorio, Hanzo, Pokal, Illumi, and Hisoka. There is a mixture of motivation, skill, and mindset between all 7 of these characters. Some are perhaps more worthy than others, but one thing unites them all, and that is their will to never throw in the towel, an unflinching desire to keep pursuing their hunt no matter what, and an indomitable spirit that would rather perish than fail. That is what a hunter is. I'm curious to see your thoughts on this concept. Do you agree with my reading of the story about what a hunter truly is, or do you think it's not that deep and I'm looking way too much into it? I'm going to be tackling a thematic element from each Hunter x Hunter arc in upcoming videos. The next one will be dropping later this month on the short Zoldyck family arc, but I hope to have a video out on every arc in the series by the end of the year. If that interests you, please consider subscribing, and in the meantime, some of these other videos may interest you too. Thank you so much for watching this. I really appreciate those who've made it this far, and until next time, I'll shut up.